Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. As you may or may not know, my name is Morgan, and I am doing my PhD in theater and performance studies at the moment. I am in the writing phase of my dissertation, but of course I am still constantly going back and forth to literature and my document, and referencing books when I need ideas or quotes from them. I'm still always continuing to read new books within the fields that I'm writing in, and because I didn't have a very good note-taking or knowledge management system prior to last year, I am having to revisit a lot more books that I have already read than I would ideally like to. And just this month, I had to reread an old book that I absolutely love but didn't take thorough notes on. And also this month, I have read a new favorite book that I annotated and managed in the way that I actually want to be doing those things. So in this chatty sit-down video, I just wanted to talk you through what I used to do and also what I do now when reading a book. This isn't the part where I put it into my own words or gather my own thoughts necessarily about it. This is just in the act of reading. What do I now do with the physical object, the book? And yes, I'm specifically talking about physical paper books in this video, specifically ones that you own. Enter case study 1, Alien Phenomenology, or What It Is Like to Be a Thing by Ian Bogost. I love this book, and you can absolutely tell it's yellowed. It's got writing on the front of the book. I don't even think it's my own writing. You flip to the inside cover and already you can tell how destroyed with love this book is. These little sticky notes didn't exist in there prior to my reread. That is my new system, so ignore those for now. This is a book about object-oriented ontology, which essentially Bogost is renaming Alien Phenomenology, which claims that we cannot know what it is to be another thing, but rather we can only know what it is like to be that thing. So we can only understand the world through metaphor. Object-oriented ontology is a branch within speculative realism, which is a response against the correlationism, as they call it, of idealism, aka the idea that everything in the world only exists as a correlate of or for humans. And so it's trying to not undermine, but rather just decenter the human from philosophy. And this is a branch of philosophy that I'm just really fascinated about. I first got this book after my undergrad, before going into my master's, because I wanted to keep my mind active in between the undergrad and the master's. So I read it the summer before my master's for the first time. I'm not sure if I took any notes on that read. I probably did, but there are so many notes in here that I just can't tell anymore where they came from. And then in my master's, I took a class called Theories of Material Culture, and this was a reading for that class, and I presented on this text. We each had to do a presentation. And in this book, Bogost calls the practice of philosophy carpentry, because he's encouraging us to do things and to make things as philosophy, to understand the world by actually interacting with it, not just through thought and reading and writing. The way Bogost does that is through video games, and I decided for this class presentation that we were also going to spend the presentation, or rather workshop, making things, doing philosophy, getting our hands dirty, and it was the most absolutely fun time I have ever had in a university classroom. But that's besides the point. The point is that for that class, I used this book itself as a notebook to collect my thoughts about my presentation. So I'll put up a video on the screen, but whenever I found something that I wanted to talk about in my presentation, I would put a little note next to it, and that would draw my attention to the passage that I wanted to use in the presentation. And then at the beginning of the book, I made all of these jot notes about what I wanted to do for the presentation. But then, in the second year of my PhD, I did my comprehensive exams, and I used this book again extensively when writing one of my exams. I pulled out the idea that Bogost has about lists as philosophical tools, and I wrote my exam as a listicle, and I justified that through this book. Again, I didn't have very good note-taking practices for my comps, definitely better than I had before. I was writing out, I was using the Cornell method of note-taking, but I am absolutely certain that I highlighted and made lines around this book to draw my attention to what I wanted to document in my Cornell notes. Because unlike the knowledge management system I have now with Cornell notes, you kind of have to know what you're saying. Like you're writing on a linear piece of paper, and there's only as much space as you leave for yourself. Now luckily I was doing that method on an iPad, and so I could circle words and move them down and add in new words, so it was kind of malleable in that way. But ultimately, even those notes are kind of useless to me now. The biggest issue I wanted to talk to you about with writing in your books, because I'm not against writing in your books, like, as a moral position. Like, I don't think that writing in books is like fundamentally bad. I actually quite like books with writing in them. I think it's quite interesting to pass knowledge along that way. It's just that the amount that I've scribbled in this book, no knowledge, like no information is being translated anymore. It's not useful, it's not pretty, it makes no sense, even to me, and you would think that if anyone can make sense of my notes about something, it's me, but no. And every time I reread this book, I would just like go in with a different color pen, or I would go in with a highlighter this time, or this time I would draw boxes around the paragraph instead of underlining it, because I needed to know that I was making notes for the project I'm doing now and not to look at the things that I was using for the essay I had done last year. And that just stopped being practical, and I realized that when I went to, again, go use these thoughts in my dissertation writing. I just finished this book for like a 4th time, and to me, having to reread this book 4 times, that is, in my opinion now, such a waste of time. Like, obviously, if you're getting joy out of a reading experience, you should absolutely reread a book. That's not a waste of time. But if you are just rereading the book to remember what it said, like, I could have taken better notes the first time I read this book, and then I already would have had the quotes pulled. I already would have had all of my thoughts about the book written down. And yes, I'm probably always going to have to refer back to this book for little extra things or to clarify the note that I took, but I shouldn't have to reread it every single time I want to use an idea from it. I should have thorough enough notes already that I at least know the page that I want to go to find the idea. I shouldn't have to reread the book to find that page. So I have just reread this book for the last time. I am finally making thorough notes in my Zettelkasten in Obsidian about this book, but today I want to talk to you about my new system that I am using for when I read a new book, or when I reread a frickin' old book. So this book is by Bruno Latour, who is probably my favorite academic thinker and writer of all time. I love his writing, I love the way he thinks, I love the ideas that he's given us. Even Ian Bogost is drawing from him. But this book is called Down to Earth, Politics in the New Climactic Regime, and it's talking about how we need to incorporate the Earth itself as a political actor. It's not about the right or the left anymore, it's about the Earth itself and the fact that our so-called societies are going to collapse if we don't take the Earth seriously as a political actor that has a hand in the seemingly societal political issues of today. I flipping loved this book, and I know that it's not going to get as dirty and ragged as Alien Phenomenology, even though I loved it, because I have a better note-taking system now. Nowadays, when I read a book, I use 4 tools. The most important tool of all is these little sticky tabs. Since we're talking about a book about climate change, I will say that these are made of plastic and they come in a little plastic bag, and that's not great. In the future, I think I'd like to use paper post-it notes that come as tabs, because post-it notes in my area anyway are recyclable. However, I will say that I do reuse these, so after I fill up a book with these sticky tabs, when I pull the sticky tabs out of the book, because I've taken the note and I don't need it there anymore, I will actually refill these things at least one time and until the stickiness is gone before throwing out the sticky tabs. So this is the first tool, and I use 3 dominant colors in the book. The first color I use is purple because these ones come with 2 purples, and so there's more of them in a little packet, and that's the majority of the sticky notes is the purple. And if I run out of purple, I'll move into the blues. The purple sticky notes are just for anything that is drawing my attention, anything that I want to remember, anything that I might want to make a note about, anything I'm finding interesting. And if I have tabbed something that I then later find a better phrasing of in the book, I might actually remove the previous tab and stick it in the later instance of that idea, because I probably really only need 1 quote for that idea, and I don't want to have to go through like too many sticky tabs as I am taking notes on a book. So that's the purple stickies, that's the first color. The second color is usually the yellow or the lime green. Those ones are usually confined to the back of the book because those are referencing a source that I want to take a look at. So whenever Latour mentions a book that I haven't read but I'm curious about, I will put a yellow sticky tab on that. Oftentimes these are focused around the bibliography or the notes section of the book, so that's why you see the yellows mostly confined to the back of the book. And the third color, as you can see, is the pink, or maybe I would use orange if necessary, and that's just like a pop in the purple to identify things that are like extremely important to me. That might be right now for me, it's extremely important because it's relevant to my dissertation. Like, for instance, in this section at the bottom, he says, today, the decor, the wings, the background, the whole building have come on stage and are competing with the actors for the principal role. And I just loved this instance of using theater as a metaphor to talk about the earth and our political landscape. So being in a theater and performance studies PhD program, obviously if he's using theater as his metaphor to describe this situation, that's like especially important to me, and I want to pay special attention to that. And if I have limited time to take notes on this book before writing, for instance, I'm going to just go to those pink ones because I know those are the super important points that I actually am definitely going to use and like want to prioritize getting in my dissertation or whatever I'm working on. But everything's important, and I'm going to take notes on all of it because remember, I'm not just taking notes for this specific project, but for all potential future projects so that I never have to reread this book entirely unless I want to. So that's the sticky tabs. The second tool I use in conjunction with the sticky tabs is a highlighter of a single color, and I will use this when it is not necessarily clear what the sticky tab is referring to. I do my best to put the sticky tab exactly over just the sentence that is of note. However, sometimes it's hard to tell, or there are ideas all over the page and I don't want to put like 5 sticky notes on a single page, so I will just highlight the words or sentences that are particularly important. And the final 2 tools that I use when annotating an academic book are sticky notes, the big paper kind that you can write on, and of course, a pen. Any old pen will do. And I use these for 2 reasons. First of all, if I have read something in the book and I'm having a particular personal thought about it, and I think that I might forget that thought if I don't write it down, I will write it down on a sticky note and I will stick it over the place where I had the thought. This way, when I get to that point to put Latour's ideas into my note-taking and knowledge management system, I can also remember what thought I had while reading, because otherwise I'm having a billion thoughts while reading, I'm not going to remember them all. The second reason I use sticky notes is just to summarize the points. If there's a particularly complex passage and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to understand what's going on from just glancing over it when I do go put these notes in my system, then I will summarize that section in my own words, so it's easier for me to get back to those ideas when I'm skimming through adding notes into Obsidian. And that's everything that I do to mark up a book nowadays. Some people have commented on my videos saying that like I sticky tab too many things, I take too many notes, and I'm basically just regurgitating the book into my Obsidian. I mean, people should use their systems in whatever way works for them, and this is the way that works for me. I would rather have too many notes about a book than not enough notes about a book, and the PhD is essentially my full-time job right now, and I'd like to be a writer in the future, so taking notes on books and coming up with ideas based on those ideas would be my full-time job, so try to keep the sticky tabs as decluttered as possible, but if there's something that I might use in the future, I'm gonna tab it, and I'm going to save that note, even if it's not immediately useful. What this usually means for academic books is that the majority of the stickies end up in the first maybe 50 pages of the book, because that's usually the introduction and the chapter breakdown where they're summarizing all of the ideas that are going to be in the book. Oftentimes I can skim later on because people are using long examples and I don't need to know every detail of their example if I understand the overall point of the example, and so I probably don't need to put sticky tabs in their examples because those are their examples, not ones that I'm personally probably going to use. And then, as I said, the yellow ones end up mostly condensed in the back side of the book unless the author is like very vocal about a lot of different sources throughout the text that they refer to, which sometimes happens and I really appreciate actually. I'm always looking for other really good books to read that authors that I really like have recommended or are citing from to get their ideas. And then of course I would go through the book, and for every single sticky I will revisit it and decide if it is something I want in my permanent note-taking system. If I've decided that sticky isn't useful to me anymore, I will take the sticky tab out and I will save it for another time if it's still got stick to it. If it's something I do want to save, then I will take that note. If the sticky is for an idea that I don't think is very urgent, but I might use eventually, and I don't really feel like I have the time right now to take that note, I'll just leave the sticky in the book, because this is a book that I own and I can put it on the shelf, and later when I have more time on my hands, I can pull old books out and just document the notes that I didn't get around to taking the first time around, because those stickies are still in there. So for each sticky after I'm done reading the book, or at intervals throughout reading the book, because sometimes I don't want to do like 200 notes all at once, so I'll take the notes for the first chapter while I'm reading the third chapter. This book is just only like 100 pages, so it didn't take me long to read, and I wasn't at home while I was reading it, so I wasn't in my note-taking system, so I was just sticky tabbing the whole thing. and now I'm going to put the whole thing into my obsidian. But whatever the case is, a sticky tab either stays there to keep pointing to the place that I haven't put into my permanent system yet, or I put the note into my permanent system and I take the sticky tab out because I don't need it anymore. I now have that page reference in Obsidian, so if I ever need to return to that page, I already know the page number. I don't need a sticky note telling me where it is. Or I decide that that note doesn't need to be permanent. I'm probably not going to use that idea, or I already documented that idea from somewhere else in the book, so I just get rid of the sticky note. And that's it. That is what I do for my books. That is how I keep my books clean now, even though I do love them just as much, versus before, where my books would get all grimy and confusing and borderline unreadable because of how many scratches there were on the inside. I hope that this video was helpful or informative or at least engaging for you. If you think this video would help other people, then give it a like. If you like this type of content, I'm going to be making a lot of it this year as I finish my PhD, so subscribe to my channel. And if you've been watching my videos for a while and you want to support my channel in some way, I have a super thanks button below now, so you can actually tip this video and it will highlight your comment for me, and I'll get to say thank you. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in another video soon.